Engine 1 from Car 1. Car 1's on scene. Assuming command. Give me a C.A.N report.
What's going on, everybody? This is Mike Goldstein. Stickers of the C.A.N report. Nozzle Tov, everybody. I have a really cool guest with us tonight. He is a doctor. I have a doctor in the house, and his name is Dr. David Hupp, and he is an author, and he has a really cool book that came out, Leadership and Management for Fire and EMS Departments. It's V.I.P.E.R Improvement. I have it right here, and I'm excited to talk about it and talk about what he's come up with to help departments with leadership and management. And this is something really cool. As soon as he reached out to me, I was like, I got to get you on here and talk about this, because we talk about leadership and management a lot. And if we can have something that helps us to make us more efficient, then why not? So, Doctor, thank you so much for being on the C.A.N report.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Before we start, I just want to give a shout out to my sponsor, Engine House Designs. Engine House Designs. He makes some really cool stuff. Actually, my really cool stuff just came in. If you see behind me, I got my flag. My flag just came in. So everybody, if you're watching and listening, he does flags. He does hats. My hats just came in. So he just did my metal up the ass t-shirts, and hats. And I have these as well. So I've got winter hats, I've got baseball hats, I got a flag behind me. So please check out Engine House Designs. He's a firefighter-owned business. He's out of Memphis, and he's just a solid dude. So please check him out. Cody Hill, Engine House Designs, LLC, Igniting the Pride. And with that being said, I also just make sure that everybody is clicking the like buttons, the subscribes. It helps me to know that you are listening, you're liking it. And if there's anything you want for me to do different, or if you want new guests, shoot me a message. I'd love to hear from you guys. So I'm going to jump into your bio there, Dr. David Hupp. Man, I'm so pumped to talk to you. This is going to be great. All right. Dr. David Hupp has been in the fire service for more than a decade as a volunteer firefighter, EMT, for the Solomons Volunteer Rescue Squad and Fire Department, which is in Calvert County, Maryland. He has a doctorate in business administration, healthcare management, a master's degree in business administration, and a bachelor's degree in business administration. Hupp is the award-winning author of V.I.P.E.R, V-I-P-E-R Improvement, Fire/EMS Department Leadership and Management, which focuses on integrating business improvement tools within the first responder industry. The book is the recipient of the Regal Summit Book Award and an award finalist for the Next Generation Indie Book Award and Reader's Favorite Book Awards. He also has improvement certification as a Lean Six Sigma Black Belt and Certified Professional in Healthcare Quality, and a Strategic Healthcare Leadership Certificate from Cornell University. He has 13 years experience in the healthcare field and is employed at the Johns Hopkins Hospital as a Senior Quality Improvement Professional, where he focuses on process improvement, hospital efficiencies, and patient safety. That is a mouthful, and that is impressive, my friend. So I'm going to start right off. I'm ignorant to a lot of this. So what is a Sigma Black Belt? Obviously, it's not karate.
Right. Lean Six Sigma is a improvement methodology that's been used for many years. Lean was created by Toyota, and they look at processes to reduce waste, and they define waste as anything that doesn't add value to the customer. So basically making things more efficient, and they've got a bunch of tools that you use within it. And the Six Sigma piece, that was actually developed by Motorola, and that's more about process stability, making sure things are reliable. And it brings a lot of process control, like control charts and stuff like that into it. And as you can work your way up the levels, and that's what you're referencing as a black belt. You have to take a couple courses, and then you actually have to take and lead projects. And specifically, since I'm in healthcare, I led a couple projects, and that was part of a kind of a capstone class in order to get that certification.
Okay. So you have, amazing qualifications here, and you have a great background as well from doing things in the fire service. So you seem to have this urge all of a sudden to, not all of a sudden, but you seem to want to help others, not just in the field, but us as firefighters in EMS. What inspired you to write this book?
Yeah. So like you said, it was it was slow growing over time. And I noticed just that, I'm using a lot of these tools and techniques of business improvement at my job. However, I wasn't seeing these tools used to the same, saturation levels that at the front in the fire service and other fire departments that I was at work. And I was thinking, why is that? Why aren't we using these types of tools? So I tested the waters a little bit and wrote an article for Firehouse magazine on smart tools or smart goals and setting those, and actually they published that in the print magazine right off the bat. So the editor told me that was pretty rare, so I was pretty happy about that, and I didn't think I was going to get a call back at all for that one. And then that kind of really instilled, like, okay, there might be a need for this, and people see a genuine interest, maybe I can put something together. So you had asked the question about Lean Six Sigma. Why couldn't I apply that type of specific to the first responder industry? So I started just writing, and I kind of woke up in the middle of the night, actually, with the framework that you see in the book, where it's this kind of flow chart. And I literally scribbled it on my phone, like a kid in crayon, written in crayon. And then it really only took me like 2 or 3 months to write the book. I guess I just had a lot to say. And after that, it was just pretty much 9 months of editing and stuff. So that's kind of what really inspired me, was making these tools available in a way that's easily digestible to everyone else in our field, so that they can use them in their departments, because we're budgets are being slashed, we're having to do more with less, we're kind of forced to be more efficient. We've got less people to do it. I mean, volunteer numbers have dropped precipitously over the past couple decades, so we have to be smarter with how we do these things. And when you add in these departments with their land, their buildings, apparatus, equipment, they're multi-million-dollar organizations, and we kind of need to treat it like a business. And if that's the case, then we need to use business improvement tools especially on the administrative side.
I like that. I like that you hit on that about the business side of it, because it is. I mean, I know people sometimes hate to admit it, but we do have a business. We have customers. They're our community. They're the people we serve. They're the ones who call 911 when they need help, and we have to treat them like customers, because they're paying the bill. There are our taxpayers, and customer service. We talk about it all the time. We talk about being professional and being ready, and reviews matter a lot. Like I've said, like same thing with poor leadership. When people leave a department that they're not happy with, that's a poor Yelp review, because more than likely, if someone knows you came from that department, they're going to say, "Hey, I'm thinking about applying that department. What do you think about it?" And they're like, "Wow, that was a bad department. I give that 0 stars." So it is a business, and in the most of senses, especially when you're running EMS as well, because you're making money off of your transports, right? So I love that you're using a business model to try to help, make us more efficient. So at Johns Hopkins and your line of work, what is it that you're doing now? How has this so far worked for what you're doing at work?
So we do something, I'll give you one specific example within the book. So one chapter is dedicated to something called root cause analysis. And at hospitals, they do root cause analysis for pretty much any adverse event. Like if a patient falls, surgical site infection, something didn't go right. Over time, we've noticed that we have to dig down to what was the true cause of the problem, because if you don't fix that, it's just going to come back. And that's kind of where the analogy comes from. If you don't pull it out by the root and you're just cutting off like the leaves, it's going to grow back. And the same thing, there's a new kind of a mentality out there called just culture, where a lot of times if something happens, they just fire the person and get rid of them. Well, if you don't fix the processes or the system that maybe contributed or allowed that person to fail, the next person that fills that role, the same thing's going to happen to them. And what ultimately happens is patient harm. We use root cause analysis tools within the hospital. It's a rigorous process. We pull a multidisciplinary team together, and we use one of the 3 tools I talk about in the book, where one of them is the 5 whys. I mean, it's pretty simple. You just ask why 5 times, but you kind of have to ask, okay, well, why did this happen? And then you ask again, well, why did that happen? And eventually you'll get down to, after the 5th one, you'll get down to that root or core issue. And by fixing that, you're going to fix all the other ancillary issues. Another one is something called Pareto chart, which is based off of the Pareto principle, and it's pretty powerful. So 20% of the time of your causes are generating 80% of your problem. So you can kind of flip that, and you can use it's universal power law. So like, for example, your top 20% of your runners at your department, your top runners, they're running 80% of your calls. So, I mean, that's kind of another way to look at it. So by focusing in on that top 20% of any issue, you can solve 80% of your problem potentially. So like if you were running a Pareto chart by fires by neighborhood, Maybe you're trying to figure out where you want to do your fire prevention at. Well, however many neighborhoods constitute that top 20%, focus your efforts there because 80% of your fires are coming from there. So, or your issues are going to come from there. So that's the Pareto principle. And then the last one is something called a fishbone diagram, which is more of a qualitative exercise where you try to get a comprehensive view of the problem by categorizing things. So you can do it by man or person, like are there any human resource problems, method, or are there any processes that are throwing errors? Then you have materials, so like any supply issues, and then machines. So if you have any IT or equipment related issues, and then you map everything out so you can see, okay, this is what's causing the problem. Because if you just kind of rush into the solution to try to be efficient, chances are you've got blind spots and you're missing it. So that's kind of one example from the hospital to where directly that we're using right now. Every hospital does this. They do root cause analysis for all of their issues, sentinel events. They're actually required to do so.
And you're applying what in this book to your current job. You've developed it, you've shown it to them, and they said, "Yep, run with it. We like what you're presenting." Is this like the V.I.P.E.R improvement? That's what you currently are using at your employment?
So no, they use like Lean Six Sigma, but they use a lot of the same tools. I just kind of, what I did for this book was I repackaged it in a way that's a little more easily digestible. But like we use Pareto charts. I use them all the time. We do those root cause analysis tools, 5 whys. We use all that at the hospital. The only thing that the Lean Six Sigma doesn't really necessarily do is talk about marketing and human resource management specifically. But in the fire service, especially on the volunteer side, you really need marketing because that's your recruitment, that's your fundraising, and your community relations. So you need to have a basic understanding of what marketing is. Same thing with human resource management. That comes into the leadership and management piece. Lean Six Sigma is more about how to improve, not about motivational based techniques on how to use positive reinforcement, how to cohort your department by your superstars, your steadies, and your non-players. Because how you manage each of those groups is going to be different. Your superstars, they want a lot of responsibility, so you want to give them that professional development, and that's going to be different from the other groups.
And what is V.I.P.E.R? We didn't cover that first. What does it mean?
Yeah, sorry, I probably should have started with that. So V.I.P.E.R, it's an acronym. So it stands for, and they're the values that kind of permeate throughout the system. So it stands for variance inhibiting, performance, efficiency, and reliability. So variance inhibiting talks a little bit about that process control I was talking about earlier with Six Sigma. So variance, you want processes to be stable. You don't want things to vary or to deviate from what's supposed to happen. So like when we get an assignment, we go on scene. If you get an outlier, that's probably somebody who's deviating, right? They're freelancing. That's an example of somebody having a variance or a deviation. You want a stable process as much as possible. So that's why you want to inhibit variance. And then performance, it sounds like what it is. You want to set a goal, you want to meet it, and what are you doing to be effective to reach it? And then efficiency, being a good steward of your resources and trying to reduce as much waste as possible. And then reliability is all about being dependable, consistent. Consistent leadership is really important with that. And so that's kind of where the V.I.P.E.R idea came from.
That's awesome. I love that how it's all spelled out. We have so many acronyms in the fire service. So there's so many. So it's hard to keep up with everything, but you laid it out pretty well. So I'm reading through here. You mentioned it earlier, the SMART goals. That really looked like a good chapter because you're hitting on a lot of things of how to really make the departments more efficient and looking at really good goals. So what is the SMART goals?
Yeah, so SMART goals is a element of a strategic plan. So you do a strategic plan once every 5 years. I actually just completed one with my own fire department. I facilitated that. It took about 7 or 8 months where you do your mission, your vision, your values, what you stand for. Then you do a SWOT analysis, which is your strengths, your opportunities, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then from there, you use that to generate your SMART goals because you want to set a goal to enhance a strength. You want to set a goal to address a weakness. And it's an acronym again. So when you set a goal, either for your department or as an officer, if you set it for any crew members that you have, for like if they're not another officer throughout the year, you want to make sure it's not an ambiguous goal. Because if you just say I want you to do better. Well, how am I going to do that? It has to be trackable. Smart stands for being specific. So you have to be, you don't want to be too general. You want to be obviously specific. You want to be measurable. You want to tie the goal to a specific number if you can, like this many times or by this percent, something like that. It has to be attainable. So you don't want to set something at like 100% because, things happen. So, you want to make sure that it's a stretch goal, but obviously that they're able to attain it. And also has to be, the R stands for reasonable. So you want to make sure that it's within your scope to actually impact. Like if you're going to set a goal for your department and it's something that is contingent on some other agency or something, then it's out of your control. So it's not going to be reasonable. And then the last is time based. So you want to set a time frame on it, like a deadline, maybe by the end of the year, end of the quarter, end of the month, whatever it is. So it really kind of takes the ambiguity out of goal setting and allows, especially I was talking to this about earlier. So if you're a superstar, sets the expectation and the standard. So I know what I need to do to exceed it. But it also holds accountable. So if anybody, is struggling a little bit, they know exactly what they need to do at least to meet that goal. And then just to relate it back, we use these goals, this framework at my hospital. We use them for our performance goals every year. We have to, when I write my goals, when I'm going to try to accomplish this for the next year, I have to write them in a smart format. So
smart format. And in the book, do you give a format of that? Like, do you lay
I
it
give
out?
an example.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I give two, and one of them is like if you're assigning an officer, you're going to be in charge of apparatus checkoffs. So I give an example. You have to do this many apparatus by this time of day. That way, it's specific because it's they're telling them exactly which apparatus you're responsible for. But it has to be done within 30 minutes at the start of shift. So maybe there's a buffer in case they're out on a call, and then giving a deadline. You need to do this many by the end of the week or something like that.
Now, did you develop a lot of this all by yourself? Like you said, I know you had a lot of inspiration from all the other, from Lean and some other classes that you've taken. This is pretty in depth. So it's amazing that you came up with this. Did you have help on this? Or is this like, it just all of a sudden popped in your head and you just, for a while, you just worked on it?
Well, the flow of it kind of popped in my head. Some of the tools have been in existence for quite a while, like statistical process control charts. They've been around like 80 years and we don't use them in the fire service. It's basically like a way to look at your trending data to see if something's actually happening. So I didn't invent that, but like I describe it and apply it within our first responder industry lens to kind of give them an idea of how we could use it by giving examples. I did create one specific tool, and that's the under change management. It's called the burn change management model. So there's a couple different models out there, but some of them, they're like 8 different steps, like the Cotter model. If you were to look that up, it's like 8 different steps on how to change. So if you implement a new policy, new piece of apparatus, new protocol, change is hard. People worry about their job status, if it's going to be more work, if they're going to fail, what have you. So there's actually studies out there that say that 2 out of 3 changes end up failing. So it's nice to have a structured way to address change. And I created the burn change management model. It's just 4 steps where you set the burning platform by showing data or, compelling patient stories or something like that to basically tell everyone, hey, this is an issue. And then the second step is urgency through action. So you're going to channel all that energy by bringing a group together and discussing what the solution is going to be. And it's really important to include people that are going to be involved in that solution on the team developing it. It really draws on other best practices, such as it's something called the IKEA effect, where people place more value in things that they make than, so if you made a table, I'm going to place more value on it, even if there's another table that's the exact same, that I paid the exact same price for. So if you're going to involve somebody in the development of it, they're going to talk it up when you're not around. It's going to stick better. And then the third step is requirements for change. So you're going to do all your all your training, whether it's classroom, whatever, job aids, any FAQs, stuff like that, and making sure that you're pushing out that communication, multiple different modes, WhatsApp, text messages, bulletin boards, emails, what have you. And then last step is for sustainment, the need for sustainment, where you want to have a control plan. After you roll it out and you talk it up with all these accomplishments, making sure you're doing, like, if it's EMS based, making sure you're monitoring, doing quality control, your patient care reports, or any other documentation for incident reports. You do secret shopping or direct observation, but that kind of hardwires and freezes the process. So that's one tool that I actually made up myself that I felt that there was a gap that there really wasn't anything out there. But a lot of the other tools have been available for a very long time. And you see them sporadically, throughout. People write about them in Firefighter Nation or Firehouse Magazine and stuff,
Hmm.
but they haven't really pulled them together because you can use them individually. But when you use them in a framework like I've developed, they kind of play off of each other and they become exponentially more powerful.
So, man, it's a lot. And you are really, really, you're a smart dude. And I am not. Okay. So I think of me as I am a bottom line firefighter, and trying to find out how to be, if I want to step up in the world and I want to be a better leader and get more knowledge and more tools, how do I read this book? How can I get the most information out of it? Because you mentioned earlier that you also, it coincides with you doing an actual class. So how does the book and your platform, your class coincide with this?
I think it helps having an understanding of the problem solving process. A lot of times there's a lot of issues that happen in our departments and sometimes we want to rush in and try to solve the problem because that's what we do. We solve problems. But if we don't take the time to kind of think through it strategically, we're not covering our blind spots. And you may implement a solution that doesn't actually fix the problem. So I think that if you kind of slow down a little bit and plan it out and kind of walk through from beginning to end. So strategic planning, I mean, you don't have to build one yourself, but you could get involved with a committee that has a budget committee or finance committee or recruitment and retention committee. You can build and propose like, hey, let's build a small strategic plan just for this committee. Let's set some SMART goals and for the end of the year and see if we meet them. So you can insert small pieces of it.
So that I like that you mentioned that. So this can help give you ideas or help like make it a little more beneficial to build that recruitment and that retention plan, because we're all struggling, like you said, right? We're all having these issues with trying to keep people here and bring them aboard. What is some advice in this book, or what are some chapters in this book that can help with the hits on the recruitment part of it?
I would say the marketing chapter 100%. So that is, you have to almost become a marketer these days in
Yeah.
order to recruit people. And in it, I outline the very same thing that any college student's going to learn in a marketing class. In fact, I was a guest speaker at Towson University a couple weeks ago and gave a very similar presentation where we go over every marketing student's going to know the 4 Ps or the 5 Ps, the 3 Cs of marketing. You have to know that. And if you're going to push out a good marketing product. So basically you have to know what your product is. So what are we selling as a department? How are we promoting it for advertising? So are we doing it on social media? We're getting in the radio, how are we pushing this out? And then understanding where you're doing your business. So if you're doing fundraising, like I know we talked about recruitment, but where is that happening? Is it happening online? Or are we going out and talking to people? Where is that happening? And then you have to understand who your customer is and what they need and what they want. And I think that that's kind of the core of what a marketer is, and what you have to understand what their needs are and what their barriers are. So, and you also have to understand the competition. So if I'm trying to recruit, I have to try to understand what's a barrier for them to recruiting and what I'm competing against. So in this day and age where, we're competing against time, there's a lot of time to set up for training that we have to do now, for duty hours. And if you're, raising a family and maybe you have at least one job, and with inflation, you might have two or in another side hustle. So that you're competing against time. So you have to think about our product as a volunteer department. How can we make it easier for somebody to give time? So that's an example of where you have to take a step back and think critically as a marketer. What am I really trying to satisfy to get that recruit?
Now, having a doctorate in marketing and business administration, and knowing so much about marketing, what is your thoughts on using social media as a tool to help with that recruitment part? Because I think departments are starting to do more with social media, trying to attract new people to come in. It looks like it's slow, but it's happening. I was just at a testing process today for CPAT, and as the process is going through, we're eyeballing who looks really good. And, there's some hard chargers out there and people doing great in that test. And we immediately give them a business card. We're here, we're wearing our uniforms. It's now become a recruitment process. Like we're actively scouting at these testing stations. But, sometimes that can't just be that, right? With that, you've got to use social media for good, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is, because websites aren't working anymore. And, like you can have all your websites, but the younger generation is not doing that. They want to see the cool side of things. So is there any advice you can give on using that as a good tool to use? How can they use that for good?
Yeah, I agree. I think you hit the nail on the head there because it's an evolving, you have to evolve with your customer base. And if they're in social media and that's what they're using, you have to meet them there.
Hmm.
And like you said, you just have to figure out what's engaging. Like if it's, videos of you guys doing drills, so they can actually kind of see some of the, what's going on. I think that that's pretty engaging. If I was on the outside looking in, I might think that that was kind of cool. Like actually seeing some of this stuff, almost kind of like trailers.
Yeah.
Those can be pretty impactful with some pretty good music in the background or something.
I've seen some
I
though
think
are
that
just super cringy. I've seen some videos,
yeah,
and
yeah,
there's some stuff on TikTok and things that it's almost embarrassing. Like I would want to stay away from that department because it looks really, really silly. But there's also, I think we have to make sure that we're also being honest too. Like if we just do clips of all the cool things we've done, like say somebody wants to go to a fire department that catches a lot of fires, but say if my department doesn't get a whole lot, but I only show clips of all the only cool things we've done, we don't show like all the mundane work, then they're not going to want, if we just show the mundane side of it, they're not going to want to join, right? They're going to come onto our department after we post all the cool action photos and videos, and they're going to come on our department and go, wait a minute, where's all the fun stuff? What happened? So I mean, I'm not saying like we have to try to hide the fact that we have to do the mundane stuff, but I think it's important though when you're doing recruitments and you're using the video for good or social media, you got to show a mixture of both. Would you agree?
yeah. I would agree with that, 100%.
Because you go to an
If you
action
guys have
film, yeah,
Yeah,
go
I
ahead.
mean, people have open houses too and stuff, and that kind of shows some of the more mundane stuff of running events and stuff like that
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, I love that. And so you got your marketing side of it, and then so the class that you're doing, like I said, so you're using. I see you have graphs and charts in here. So in your class, are you using those obviously in conjunction with that? So how long is the class? If someone wanted to reach out to you and get more education, what is the class like?
Yeah, so the class kind of encompasses the entire book, and it walks through everything in a lot more detail. If you were to take the entire class, it's more like a seminar. It's like 4 hours, but I've done classes where we kind of break out some of the more pertinent information. Like I just did a presentation out in Ocean City, Maryland, for the Maryland Emergency Management Conference out there, and they kind of wanted to know a little bit more about change management. So I tailored it specific to that chapter, and that only took like 45 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes. So, like I said, you pick and choose kind of specific chapters. Obviously, it's better if you kind of tie them together. But yeah, we go into some more specific examples, walk through like some of the charts, break it down a little bit more, take the time to talk about some more specific examples of like change management or root cause analysis or marketing plans and stuff like that. I get more in depth of like how do you do an internal staff survey? You know,
Mm. Mm.
you have to word questions very specifically. You have to use a Likert scale. Like I get really into the weeds with that type of stuff.
So tell me about that because I see a lot of that, but there's so many surveys that come out. My department does a lot of surveys, and other departments do them. How do you make a really good survey where people are actually going to be honest and that, or because some people just blow them off, like forget it. I do the survey all the time, nothing ever becomes of it. It just goes to the wayside, or they sugarcoat it and they really don't are honest anyway. So what is it? What kind of key things should departments look at when they're trying to do an in-department survey?
So if you can make it anonymous, that helps. That way you can get that honest response back. Kind of the horse, wagon before the horse or whatever. But if you show that you're actually making changes based off of the feedback you get, you're going to have more success later on. But as far as best practices, like I said, a Likert scale, especially if you're going to ask what I like to call like close-ended questions. So, usually sometimes never, or, that five, like, or very likely, neutral, not likely, not very likely at all. The reason you can do that is because you assign a number to each one of those answers. So anything 3, which is the middle or over, that's positive. And the thing is, you can use something called a pulse survey where you ask maybe some of the same questions, twice a year, and you see your score compared to last time. And did the interventions that you implement have the effect that you were looking for? But as far as specific questions, if you ask close-ended questions like that, that can help you can tie a number to. If you're going to ask open-ended questions, don't put just a general comments field. You're going to get anything and everything. Be really specific. So we did a survey for our strategic plan this year, and it was very successful. We asked the open-ended questions. We were very specific, about our values that they hold. So we kind of framed it a little bit. Yeah, I mean, people can say whatever they want, but if you can frame it a little bit, generally they're going to stay within that. And then one of the best questions I like to ask is a likelihood to recommend question. Either likelihood to recommend you getting receiving care from this department, or likelihood to recommend you joining this department, because that is a proxy for loyalty, for brand loyalty of your department. So if you're going to ask one question, that's the one you want to ask, because that's going to give you a great overall score of how your department culture is. Because you're not going to recommend someone come in and receive care or join my department if I'm not going to have a good time or feel included, etc. So after you ask all that, it's really important to have in when I did my doctorate, you have to do something called thematic coding, where you take all the open-ended comments. You're pulling out the themes, things that are repeating, those really notable items that you're seeing time and time again. Those are themes that you want to pull out and discuss with your group. So that's kind of from an open-ended perspective. You could do a word cloud too. That helps.
So yeah, I think, man, you nailed it. That is some really good, helpful information for sure. And I think that's the problem I think with some people have with their surveys is they feel they don't go anywhere. And so how do you address that? I mean, obviously you can't be there, hold administration's hand and say, okay, you will now do this afterwards. Is there any other advice for that though? Like the follow-up, because you do all those surveys, you put all that work into it and you don't do anything with it. And then you're losing buy-in. And that's where your guys are going to be like, no, I'm not going to do the survey because we did it last month and nothing happened. And here's another one. And starts to fall on deaf ears, I imagine, correct?
It can. You're absolutely right. If you don't have a good feedback loop with that, people they're not gonna commit to it any further. So it dovetails into what we've already talked about. So if what we did was we created SMART goals based off of that information. So we heard what our department was saying, and we developed goals to address some of those issues. And so that's in our strategic plan. So by the end of this year, we have specific goals to improve our department that are linked directly to that survey based off of that. So that's how they're kind of linked. And that's what they call strategic alignment. All of those tools are aligned and used within each other. So that's why I said you can use them individually, but they become really powerful when you use them all together because they dovetail into each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Dude, I got to say, David, I'm highly impressed. Again, I'm reading through the book. It's taking me time because, again, there's some big words and some big graphs and things. And I'm like, what is that? The cat. I'm still on so there's some things that I need coaching with, but you really lay it out in your charts and your graphs. And I mean, it's very thorough. One I was looking at as well was the burn model steps, a burning platform, urgency through action, requirements for change, and need for sustainment. I can't remember if we covered that or not, but that seems like
we did.
We did. Okay. So I really did like that a lot. And we have a pretty good chapter about that. So if anyone's looking through this book, I definitely recommend hitting on burn because I like the fact that obviously it's burn and we see something that sounds like fire. We're going to, focus on that. I love the urgency through action, and taking that and moving it forward and really working on those projects. Now, with all this being said, you have your fire background. You have this amazing book that you wrote that's super helpful, chock full of information. What made you want to get into the fire service? Let's not focus on the book anymore because we've been talking a lot about it. So now what got you in the fire service?
Yeah, so when I was a kid, my dad, he was a past president of our local rescue squad. So he would run calls, bring me down to the station. And so I would see that and absorb that. So that's kind of, I think that planted the seed. And then, I fast forward, I graduated from college. And right when I graduated, the recession hit. And it was borderline impossible to get any job. I can't tell you how many, I had a master's degree at the time, could not find one. I applied to so many different places. And I'm working part-time to make ends meet. And, I was really feeling really unfulfilled. I felt like I had a lot to offer and I really wanted to apply myself. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go join the fire department. So that's what I did, and, my dad knew a lot of people down there too. So, I had, kind of a loose relationship. So they kind of knew who I was a little bit. And it was actually a blessing in disguise because as we've already talked about, the amount of time it takes to get, fire 1, 2, EMT, site ops, hazmat, if I had tried to do that now when I have a family and responsibilities, I honestly don't know if I would have been able to do it. So I was able to, blessing in disguise. I had the time. I was able to leverage it and to, use it purposefully. And so that really kind of got my feet wet with that. And then we moved over here to Calvert County and joined Solomon's, where I'm a board of director now. But that's kind of how I got my start.
And so you're still active with that department.
Yep.
And you say you've taken on a couple officer roles as well. You've taken on a couple of responsibilities. What are some things that you brought? Did you bring any of the stuff that you wrote in your book? Do you apply that with your guys there? I know you said you did some classes with them and they liked it. In your daily things that you do on that department when you're volunteering, how does it apply when you're doing it? Does it just pop in your head and you're like, oh, my book, and I'm thinking burn, or I'm thinking this. Does any of this apply when you're in the truck? Does any of that like pop in anybody's head and go, I'm going to remember that fact, and when I'm sitting in that right seat, this is going to help me lead my crew?
Like operationally? Yeah, I think it can, especially like the leadership and management piece. I talk in there about positive reinforcement and how impactful that can be. If you're going to affect your culture, especially when stuff happens on scene, there's positive and negative reinforcement. I argue in my book that it should be skewed heavily toward positive reinforcement, because if you want a behavior to continue, you want to give your energy to that. Now there's always a time and place for negative reinforcement. Like if something's happening, something's changing, someone's being not being safe or not doing their job, you got to get in it. So, the important thing is to have a hot wash afterwards. You got to talk about what happened, not only to address the issue, but for succession planning. Like, I want to know what my chief officers are thinking from their decision-making perspective. Explain why, so that eventually when, the next line of officers come up, they understand your decision-making so that we can replicate that. But with that hot wash, it's really important to, talk about what happened and not point people out and put people on blast, like in front of everyone. I don't feel like that's, very helpful, but there's going to be issues that you're going to have to address. And I think it's better if you pull them off one at a time, out of earshot, and discuss not only what happened, but why it happened and why we needed to change. And a lot of officers might leave it at that and say, okay, I told them why. But the most important piece is discussing, okay, what are we going to do to fix it? Here's the plan. You and me, we're going to come down on Saturday. We're going to train on this. We're going to throw ladders together, whatever it is. You have to give them a plan on how to fix it. And that's, I think, being a true leader. Not just pointing out people's flaws, but giving them the tools and the plan to fix it. So I think that's kind of where some of these tactics can work, operationally from a leadership perspective.
That's awesome. I didn't want to interrupt you because that was you're on a roll right there with that one. And
Right.
dude, that was beautiful. And like praise in public, right? Praise in public and then have to critique in private, because embarrassing. And again, it's not trying to be soft in the fire service. I know a lot of people feel like, we've gotten soft, but in the heat of the moment, and you come down on them, I mean, their reaction is going to be crap, and they're just going to remember that you just belittled them in front of everybody. And that's no good for anybody, because that's all anybody's going to think about. Like, take them somewhere else, educate them, re-educate them. Let's work on a plan. Like you said, have a plan. Let's work on it. And I love, actually, it makes me think of your book. Like, what in this book, like you have those plans in that book, like the SMART system, and coming up with those goals, and see what, you come up with a goal as well. I'm going to come up with a goal as an officer, and I want you to come up with a goal as a firefighter. And I want to see what those are going to be. And we're going to come back together and see if they align and see how we can work them out. I love it. So is your father still on the fire service with you?
Yeah. I mean, he's the chaplain right now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. He's 75. He's 75. He'll be 76 in February. So he's not really running too many calls nowadays, but he's involved as he can be.
Yeah, I saw that you gave props to him in your opening here, to your mother and your father and your wife, and you have your daughter Autumn and your stepson Ryan for completing me. I thought that was really, really beautiful. And then you gave, you do a scripture here. So I thought that was like, I could tell you're into faith as well. So with obviously, I didn't realize your father is a chaplain. So let's ask about that. So how does that play in effect in your daily life and doing fire service stuff and everything you see and everything you do, having your father as a chaplain? How does that work with everything? Does it make it better? Does it have an understanding of other things that go on in life?
So he's actually just filling the role of chaplain at the
Oh, okay.
department. But to your point, so he worked his paid job. He worked at NASA. He worked in logistics.
No
So
wonder you're so smart.
very big business mindset. So I kind of saw him use a lot of, kind of a business attitude and a business lens to the way that he led. And I think that that kind of impressed itself upon me as well. Because I was, after I wrote the book, I showed it to him. He was like, "What, do you think you invented this?" Like I was doing fishbone diagrams on on a wax board, back in the day. So, but yeah, so he definitely had a huge impact on the way that I kind of approach problems, because he has that business mindset as well.
Yeah, it's you have quite the background, man. You have like sounds like you have an amazing family. And you had such a great mentor with your dad being in the fire service, your dad, man, being working at NASA. And what about your mom? What does your mom do?
So she's a vice president at the local community college here. So she actually got started as like a journalist for a newspaper, and she actually helped me. She helped me edit my book. She's very good at that. So she's incredibly professional when it comes to that perspective, and gave me a lot of great ideas on how to, like syntax and grammar, all that type of stuff. So
That's amazing. And then your wife must be pretty patient as well, because you've been super active with the book and then doing everything at work and doing the volunteer side of it. Let's talk about that real quick, is how do you get all that working together? That's a lot. So how do you guys plan that out? How do you guys work your days?
She's super supportive. I mean, she really is. I definitely couldn't have done this without her. Getting my doctorate as well and volunteering at the same time, it's honestly, I think it's prioritizing and then planning as well. Like you have to kind of set like those lines for work-life balance. Like, okay, tonight it's the firehouse, but tomorrow, it's, we're going out, doing family stuff. So you kind of have to set those boundaries. And yeah, things can bump up against it. Like if you have things to do, the fire department's asking where you are and stuff like that. But from a longevity perspective, I think you have to set those boundaries, wherever they are and whatever is most comfortable for you. But that way, you can be honest with each other and have those honest boundaries. I think that that's pretty helpful. And that's how I feel like I've been successful within the fire service and been able to do everything and that I've been able to accomplish, is setting those boundaries.
I love that, dude. Open communication, boundaries. That makes really helps to make a marriage work for sure. And also having just people who are patient. Having a wife who understands your passion and knows how to be patient through all of it. I give all the props to my wife for all the crazy stuff that I do, and being up here for hours editing and talking. Like, she's downstairs taking care of business. So kudos to all the wives out there, by the way, who let us do all these things and understand our crazy passions and what we do. And also, so with you being in the fire service, I got to ask, because, it's a down and dirty job. What parts of the fire service do you love? What is it that that keeps you going? What is it that do you just like to get sweat equity with the guys? Do you love running calls and just, doing some cool stuff? Or, do you like ladder work? Do you like engine work? What is it, some specifics that you liked about the fire service?
So I guess twofold. So I love training. I'm a lifelong learner. If you haven't picked that up yet. So I love training, and we've got some great instructors at our department. My mentor from Solomon's, I've taken his class probably, I don't know, 10 times. I mean, from site ops to vehicle extrication, because he teaches it so well, and he really, has a great relationship on how to, kind of reach the students. And I pick up something new from him every time. In order to direct answer your question, I really like extrication. I think it's you have to think more. You have to plan out what you're doing. You have to have your A, B, and C plan. If something doesn't work, you have to know different techniques on what to do next. So I kind of like that perspective. So vehicle extrication, I particularly like.
Man, I thought you were going to say hazmat. You just, with all the
Nah.
numbers and math that you got going on and all the charts and graphs, I figured you'd be right into a hazmat guy. That's cool. I love extrication too. I always enjoy it. Like you said, I think it's because you honestly have to, it's crazy to say, but you have to slow it down in your mind. And you have to really be methodical of what you're doing and where you're cutting and how to set everything up. And, like Andy Frederick said, as the first line goes, so does the fire. Honestly, it's the same thing, I think, with extrication. One misstep, one, if you didn't stabilize the vehicle correctly, or if you're not cut in the right place, especially now with electric vehicles. I mean, there's just so much stuff at play now that you really have to be very observant and smart with your extrication process for survivability of the victim. So I love that you do pick that, man. That's fantastic. Now, are you a medic as well, or are you an EMTB?
Just an EMT.
Just an EMT. You hear that,
just an
folks?
EMT.
Just an EMT. I'm just an EMT as well. I'm a basics. But man, I figured I mean, with everything you got going on, man, I figured you'd be in paramedicine as well. You have plans to do that as well?
No, I don't think so. I
No,
don't think
why
so.
not?
I spend enough time at the hospital. I don't need to do any more.
That's awesome. Okay. But so with the fire service and you're working at Johns Hopkins, and you had that book that just came out. Now, do you have plans for another book? Or are you good for right now?
I think I'm good for right now. I want to be able to teach and disperse the knowledge that's already, kind of built within the book. Cause like you said, I think you've referenced this a couple of times. It's very dense. And I kind of wrote it that way because I wanted to give as much information as I could. I didn't give a lot of different anecdotes and draw things out and turn it into like this longer book. I gave as much information as I could. I'd like to, be able to have the time to kind of tease out a lot of the details and relate a lot of that information. I've done that a little bit with all the articles I've written for Firehouse and Firefighter Nation, kind of pulling on some of those ideas and applying them in different ways. But there's so much application that you can use them for. So I think that there's a lot of content before I kind of take that next step.
Absolutely. And I do love that you did hit on that as well. And I noticed that is that you don't have a lot of anecdotes. You don't have a lot of fluff in here. It really gets right to the meat of everything. So people can just dive right in and get that knowledge and try to apply it. And again, it's really that core base of this whole book is that you really have done such a great job with getting that information in there so you can extrapolate it and apply it to real world things. My hat's off to you, man, for this book. And so you also have a website to give you props for this as well. I'm going to share your page for people to see and for you to see as well, so people can see what's going on with V.I.P.E.R. And there it is. So you have V.I.P.E.R. here. So you have all your information on here. So if anybody is curious about Dr. Hupp, Dr. David Hupp, please check out his homepage. It's all in there. It's right there for everybody to see his book credentials, about him, his resume. Man, you've got it all in there, and how to get a hold of him. So if anyone's curious about it, you can also find him on Amazon. The book is on Amazon as well. And, he actually sent me a couple of copies. So if anybody's curious of a book, I might have to do a challenge or something. If anybody wants to get a book free, I will send it. And I'll have to come up with a challenge for those who are curious about this book and want to get that book out in their hands. Hit me up and we can work something out. So here's all the things that he's got going on for his book and his resume and the publications. Dude, I really do appreciate you coming up with this. I'm excited to dive more into it. Like I said, unfortunately, I hadn't had a chance to really get too deep into it because of everything else in life. And we all know, things get in the way. But this is really well thought out. And this is something new for me because I'm always reading something completely different, right? I read a lot of fire-based stuff, and so for me to get out of my comfort zone and try something different, I thank you for actually reaching out to me and showing me this, and getting a hold of me and seeing something new. I would have never come across your book, and I really do appreciate you coming out over and telling me about it and opening up my eyes of something new. I'll be bringing this to my department and having them take a look at it for sure, just for them to get some eyes on it. We always should have fresh eyes on things. I mean, I think that's always imperative for any department to grow, is that we can't just keep doing it the way we've always done it, that we need to have new ideas and new people to bring those to us. So you're doing just that, man. I appreciate it. As we're getting closer to winding down, if I'm somebody new and I want this book, how are you going to sell me this book? What can you tell me to grab the audience of the why they should buy this book? The why.
It's the business tool for the modern firefighter. That's it.
I was gonna hope for like another 10 minutes, but all right, you shortened that. But like, really, I mean, like to sell this book to everybody else, because this is the platform for you, brother. This is because you've done such a great job with this, and you're such a humble dude, and I really appreciate you. What is it that you want the audience to really get from this?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much, for taking the time to talk with me about this. I really appreciate it. But as far as, kind of trying to encapsulate everything in our departments, we always have a lot of different problems, whether they're, issues within the department with, rumors or dissent. I know you talk a lot about a toxic work environment. But all of that stuff is predicated on issues, and if you don't fix them the right way, they're just going to manifest. And we see that manifestation through things like toxic work environment and burnout, and people leaving, so having vacancy rates. So taking the time to use tools that honestly other industries have been using for decades to our advantage. I mean, they're out there, and I did my best to package them in a way that we hopefully we can understand a little bit better. But we have to be more efficient with the way that we're operating, and from an administrative side. So hopefully the book can help, even if you use a couple of the different tools to make yourself more efficient and more effective in your departments. Hopefully it can make an impact in that regard.
Love it. Fantastic, my friend. And if anybody wants to get a hold of you, please let us know how they can do that.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. You can hit me up there. On my website as well, like you just referenced. I have an email, vipeerimprovement@gmail.com. So you can hit me up any of those places. More than happy to have a discussion, or if you have any questions about the book, happy to kind of go in more detail as well.
Beautiful. Are you going to be at any conferences, any teaching events, anything else that where people can find you in person?
Unfortunately, don't have anything scheduled at the moment. Like I mentioned, I just had one out in Ocean City, but I'm focusing a lot on on my own training as well. I've scheduled to go to a couple conferences, but that's more for I want to learn more about truck work and stuff like that. So
Well,
trying to
I
stay
I don't
sharp.
know if you know, but there is a fire conference coming up in March in your neck of the woods, the Key City Fire Conference in Frederick
I'm signed
County.
up for it. Yep,
You
I
did.
did.
All right, my man. So I will be seeing you there. So anybody's curious, there's the Key City Fire Conference in Frederick County, Maryland. It's going to be a heck of a time, a lot of good classes, and Dr. Hupp will be there as well. Educate himself, like he says, he's always a student of the craft, just like me, man. And you should always be learning and always trying something new and having an open mind and open eyes. I really appreciate you so much, David. This was a great conversation, and I can't wait to read more of the book. It's going to be just a great topic for me to talk about a lot with the guys at work. I think honestly, for like table talk, like that's going to be really cool. I think honestly to really just sit down and just kind of blab about it for a little bit. It's something different because I'm always again reading a lot more, engine stuff and ladder work and other things. So this is honestly something a little more refreshing for me. So I really do appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing and what you're giving back to the fire service. And I think that's always super important, is giving back to the fire service.
And I dropped. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Right? Giving back to the fire service is super important. And that's honestly what you're doing, man. And I appreciate that. And I think we should embrace that more. So thank you so much. And with giving back to the fire service, I was picking us off the ground because I dropped it, is Next Rung. I always love to promote Next Rung. They give back to the fire service. They give back to us with mental health counseling and services. So please, if anybody is needing help, there it is, Next Rung. There's the barcode, also the number on the back as well. Please let them know. Text them if you need help. For those who are listening, it's 833-7864. They also have their website, nextrung.org. You can find them on Instagram and also Facebook. They're here, real talk. They're here to help you. So you literally can send them a text message and they'll get right back to you. And if you need services and you don't know where to find it, they're going to help you out. So, but you got to take that first step, guys. You gotta, if you're having issues at home or if you're having any kind of problems and you don't know how to solve them, we need you in this world. And I want you in this world. The world's better with you in it. So I mean it from the bottom of my heart. So if you're struggling and you need services, reach out to Next Rung or your emergency assistance program if you need to, whatever other avenues. But these guys are near and dear to my heart. So please reach out to Next Rung if you do need your help. So with that being said, Dr. David Hupp, I appreciate you so much for being on the C.A.N Report. So with that being said, y'all take care, be safe. Nozzle top. Nice job, my man. With the Kitchen Table Foundation. The Kitchen Table Foundation is a mission to help others, first responders, EMS, police. It's a huge network they're building to help people find resources and to help them through life. And they just reached out to me and I just automatically agreed to help them out and to be a part of this team. Their mission is the Kitchen Table Foundation exists to strengthen the brotherhood and sisterhood of the fire service, law enforcement, and EMS. They provide a place for first responders to gather, break bread, and find connection through camaraderie, shared experience, and support, rooted in tradition, built on trust, and driven by service. They aim to uphold the mental and emotional well-being of those who run toward the call. Their vision, the Kitchen Table Foundation envisions a national community in which every first responder is recognized, supported, and empowered, where connection overcomes isolation, and where the enduring values of service, sacrifice, and solidarity are upheld through every season of the job and beyond. And they stand for TABLE, T-A-B-L-E, teamwork, awareness, bravery, loyalty, and empathy. So I'm excited to have them on as a sponsor. I'm excited to have them on to help our community, and it's just awesome for all of us to work together to help each other out